banks aren't bad people. They're just overwhelmed right now.
Banks are scared to death, of course. They're feeling the same thing that you're feeling.
You know, the bank people. Mitt Romney campaigning in Florida, where the primary vote is less than a week away. Florida has one of the worst foreclosure problems in the country. It's bad everywhere, but it is horrendous in Florida, worse than anywhere else. Mitt Romney was standing in front of a foreclosed home in Florida when he made his "banks aren't bad people" comment yesterday. And that's not going to help him on this housing issue, an issue on which he really already needs some political help.
Don't try and stop the foreclosure process. Let it run its course and hit the bottom.
President Obama in last night's State of the Union never said the name Mitt Romney exactly, but when he said this, everybody knew who he was talking about.
Responsible homeowners shouldn't have to sit and wait for the housing market to hit bottom to get some relief.
That was not the only moment in the speech where the president used as a punching bag the man who he presumes will be his Republican opponent this fall.
If you make more than $1 million a year, you should not pay less than 30% in taxes. When Americans talk about folks like me paying my fair share of taxes, it's not because they envy the rich. On the day I took office, our auto industry was on the verge of collapse. Some even said we should let it die.
Mitt Romney famously writing the op-ed in the New York Times, "Let Detroit go bankrupt." GM now the #1 automaker in the world because nobody took his advice. After taking that beating yesterday in the State of the Union, Mr. Romney's campaign today tried to get away from another of their campaign's headaches right now. A spokesperson for Mr. Romney saying of his tax returns, which we released yesterday, quote, "As far as we're concerned, we put it to bed." I understand why the Romney campaign may want to be done with the amazing issue of his tax returns, but saying it is over does not make it over. Just ask Mr. Romney's rival, Newt Gingrich.
I think you have to live in a world of Swiss bank accounts and Cayman Island accounts and automatic, $20 million a year income with no work to have some fantasy this far from reality.
If that weren't bad enough, Mr. Romney today also got the news that Mr. Gingrich's super PAC has bought up time for $6 million worth of anti-Mitt Romney TV ads in Florida. One of the reasons Mitt Romney was seen as the inevitable candidate on the Republican side is because of the so-called money primary. That's the way the Beltway talks about it, right? There's the primary, and then there's the more important money primary, a candidate showing the ability to build a big base of donors and raise a lot of money from those donors for his campaign. Mitt Romney, of course, won the money primary this year early and hugely. But now it turns out, thanks to Citizens United, that there is no money primary anymore. It's been canceled. Newt Gingrich doesn't have a donor base. He doesn't have to. He hasn't proven any ability to raise money in state after state, at event after event. Newt Gingrich, it turns out, only has to raise money with one family in Nevada, the Adelson family, casino money, who now have given $10 million to Newt Gingrich's super PAC. After Citizens United, the money is on tap. Anybody can level the playing field in terms of money. All you need is one funder. You don't have to prove yourself to anybody else. And money buys results. I mean, it's not sufficient to buy results, ask Rick Perry, but it is necessary, and it does work. New polls showing Mr. Gingrich broadening his lead nationally over Mr. Romney to 7 points. Mr. Gingrich also eliminating what used to be Mr. Romney's lead in Florida. The two men now just separated by 2 points in Florida. But maybe the worst pickle that Mitt Romney is in right now is that he's getting piled on from the right by Newt Gingrich. But the Democrats won't take Mr. Gingrich seriously enough to direct any of their fire at him. So even as Gingrich surpasses Romney in the polls, Gingrich still takes no heat. There was nothing in the State of the Union address about Newt Gingrich. Are you kidding me? It was all about Mitt Romney. All of the attacks in it were all about Mitt Romney. Gingrich on the right attacking Mitt Romney and beating him. Democrats on the left attacking Mitt Romney, too. And they can't be bothered to take any other shots at Newt Gingrich. That's Mitt Romney's political reality right now. He is getting it from all sides. And because of that, whether or not the banks are bad people, today was another bad day in politics to be Mitt Romney. Joining us now is Steve Kornacki, the political news editor at Salon.com. Steve, thanks for joining us. It's good to see you.
You too.
What do you make of the Democrats' decision on the national level and at the state level in Florida to never mention Newt Gingrich ever, to go pure Romney?
Well, I mean, I think it is true Romney is still probably more likely to win this than Gingrich. So there's a little of that. But I think clearly they would much rather run against Newt Gingrich in the fall because there's really no public figure in America who has a better feel for the self-destruct button than Newt Gingrich. So, if he ends up winning the nomination, you don't need to have spent 6 months going after the guy and laying the foundation for a general election attack. All the information is already there. And even if you forget that, he's going to make 6 mistakes in the first 6 hours he's the nominee. With Mitt Romney, you have to work a little harder to sort of get the stuff out there. And I think you're sort of seeing that in the past month. A perfect example is the tax returns. Mitt Romney ran for office in 1994, in 2002, and in 2008. And in all three of those campaigns, he didn't release his tax returns. But the Democrats, the Obama, the White House, sort of helped make that issue. They're not the only reason this became an issue lately, but they helped push that along. They helped get that into the discussion. They helped draw attention to the issue by talking about the Buffett rule and things like that. And they forced a situation where Romney had to talk about it and had to put them out. And you alluded to that poll, now that shows a 20-point jump in the past month in terms of Romney's unfavorable numbers among basically white blue-collar voters. Yeah. This is an important swing constituency in the fall. If Obama's going to get reelected, he has to make inroads with that group from where they voted in 2010. And you look at the past month, you look at Romney standing with those voters, this is important progress that the White House has made. And you're not going to do that just by letting Mitt Romney be Mitt Romney. You have to press him. You have to force the issue a little bit. They've done that.
And in South Carolina, looking at that same group of under $50,000 a year white voters, Newt Gingrich beat Mitt Romney by something approaching, I think it was 20 points in terms of the way he performed there. So not only is Romney's unfavorables going up, and that's something that can stick no matter who he's running against, but in competition with other Republicans, people are picking anybody but him.
Well, and the extraordinary thing to me about the Republican numbers is not just what happened in South Carolina, because you could say, Gingrich drew attention to Bain Capital and the tax thing was an issue, and we could say, well, that's why Romney had trouble with blue-collar voters in South Carolina. But we saw the exact same thing in New Hampshire. We saw the exact same thing in Iowa. There's a direct relationship between enthusiasm for Romney among Republican voters and their income levels. When you get over $200,000, he's absolutely cleaning up. When you get to that 30 to 75, he's getting his clock clean. So that tells me that Republicans have been watching this guy closely for years, and I think that there's this disconnect, a basic disconnect between blue-collar Republican voters and Romney, and I don't see any reason necessarily why that's not going to extend to the general election when those voters start paying attention to it.
We actually have a specific Rachel Maddow Show branded effect we have to do whenever we talk about Romney's popularity among $200,000 earners and up. If I put it on, it makes me look immediately like some sort of horrible trans version of Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
So I'm not going to do that because it'll start a whole different conversation. But
was that a leftover from the billionaires for Bush? Remember those guys?
I just had this laying around for when I do a trans Abe Lincoln act. But anyway, the one thing I wanted to ask you about the tax returns thing is that one of the things that we've learned about this disclosure in Romney is, as you said, he didn't want to release those tax returns in previous campaigns. But we do know that he released to John McCain, when John McCain was looking for a vice presidential running mate, 23 years of Mitt Romney tax returns. Right. Here, I've got them all ready to go. Here you are, sir. John McCain apparently looked at those and said, actually, I'll take Sarah Palin. Does that undermine Romney's case about disclosure? Hasn't his case for disclosure sort of been like it's hard for him to get all that stuff together and it's nobody's business?
Oh, it's been that. It's been the Democrats will use it against me in the fall. I think that one actually drew some derision from a Republican audience. It's been, confronted directly about his father releasing 12 years back in the 1960s, saying, well, I'm not going to do that. That was too much. That's something I disagreed with my father on. And that gets to the heart of sort of the message that's used against Romney, both within the Republican Party and if he's the nominee in the general election, that this is not a guy who's ever really telling you what he's thinking, why he's thinking it. This is a guy who's very calculated, who's going to give you whatever he thinks he needs to say, and then he's going to work backwards from there and come up with a justification. Yeah. And it's easy to poke holes in that, and when you get that reputation, that's very damaging no matter who the audience is.
What I want to know from the Mitt Romney, from the John McCain campaign is, did you guys keep copies when Mitt Romney gave you all that stuff? And how come when you looked at it all, you didn't pick him? Just asking. Steve Kornacki from Salon.com, the news editor there. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. All right. The rare but important Venn diagram overlap coming up between Lemony Snicket and the Republican Party. That's next.